Giddy up.
And you're on.
Cool. Hey, everybody. My name's Craig. Currently live in Austin. I am an alcoholic. Um, I reside in Austin right now. I grew up, or I started my life in Canada, actually. I grew up in a small town, a town of about 1,000 people. It's called Wedgeport, Nova Scotia, East Coast, east of Maine. So I grew up there. I thought I had a regular childhood. I still do. I had a lot of friends. We did a lot of things outdoors. We played hockey, played baseball in the summers for the short summers that we did have. There's nothing really special about my upbringing. I had, I, I was really focused into sports, and I think this came into play later in my life. But my father and I really practiced a lot for sports so that I could just be the best that I could possibly be. And I played a lot of high level. I played high level hockey, AAA hockey, and I played a lot of baseball growing up. We were always on the road every weekend, every weekend. So I was really brought up to be the best that I can possibly be at all times. Um, and this is something that I think came into play a little later in my life that may have been a little bit of a detriment to me, but it was a good learning experience. But other than that, childhood was normal. I did end up with some heart problems early on. Around 9 years old, I had a pacemaker put in. I was fainting at a really young age, and nobody knew why. Finally, I fainted with a 24-hour heart monitor on, and the doctors figured out, hey, you're waking up with and your heart rate's not picking up, so you're passing out. So we're going to put a pacemaker. So that was an interesting adjustment as a young boy, going through all those surgeries. But yeah, nonetheless, I came back to sports, and I had what a normal childhood even after that. One thing I do know that was tough from my childhood um, was I noticed there was such a switch in me that when I went from elementary school to high school, where I grew up, there wasn't a junior high, so it's elementary to high school. This was really jarring to me because in elementary school, I was a pretty popular kid. I had friends. I was good at sports. I guess I was the jock, is what other people may have considered me. But yeah, I was popular. I had friends. But when I got to high school, it was just like really jarring. And the one thing that I think was jarring was like everything that I thought was important or was that made me cool was no longer a thing. Everybody was drinking. Um, and I really had a hard time with that. And it was like, okay, I needed to make a major adjustment to like, okay, how do I fit in here? And I just felt really uncomfortable. And it was really hard for me to make friends. Um, yeah, there was just such a big switch in my life. But nonetheless, that led to me like, okay, everybody's drinking. I'm going to drink. I'm not going to be the odd one out. So I think it was in October. I don't know what year. I was 14 years old. I went to a high school party. I snuck there and I drank. I had a half pint of vodka and I was like, I get it. As soon as I had like my buzz, I'm like, I get alcohol. I know why everyone's doing it. I'm on board. Let's do this. I'm going to be a cool kid and no one's going to stop me. And soon after that, it just started. I was very quickly a weekend drinker. Um, I could be found at any party on the weekends. I was there drinking. My entire week was spent trying to find like who can buy my alcohol. That was my journey. Um, it, it, I think about it now, but I try to think of other people, and a lot of other people were doing the same thing, and it didn't really like. I didn't think I stuck out, but that's just how things were where I grew up. Um, but there were some times where drinking really showed its signs of being a problem. There was a time where I can remember, especially in high school, it was okay. Like the goal was going to a party to see how much I could drink. I remember going through to in 11th grade, going to a prom party, and being like, okay, tonight I'm going to drink a 40 ouncer of vodka and I'm not going to puke. And that was my goal. Like, I don't know, that it just doesn't, it seems weird now to think about that. I'm like, well, why was that my goal? What was I going to accomplish with that goal? It's just other than trying to seem cool to other people, trying to be the best at drinking. I don't know. It was just, it seems odd now to think about that. There were other signs of problem drinking. I went out camping with some friends, and I remember I was drinking beer for the first time, and I guzzled a dozen, not knowing what I was doing, and I ended up smoking a cigar, and all that went terribly, and I just ended up throwing up everywhere. I couldn't walk. The Rangers had to come get me, and call my parents to come get me. There was we used to go to a different town to some parties often, a town called Pubnico, and my friend had a pickup truck, and there were too many of us to fit in the cab, so a lot of us would just sit in the back of the truck, way in the back. I remember, like, we were driving on the highway at 60 miles an hour, and I was sitting on the roof of the truck, and I'm like, thinking about that now, it's just like, what was I thinking? Like, why were these okay times to do, or okay things to do? um, then I started getting angry. I was um, every drinking episode involved me mouthing off, like, to someone. I never got into a fight, but I was quite often mouthing off. I could just be, I don't know, I was just always pissed off. One time, New Year's Eve, I remember I was in 12th grade. We were at a party in a hotel, and the hotel went into lockdown because everybody was partying and trashing the place, and I was just not having it. And the cops were called, and I yelled at the cops, and the cops were just like, "Okay, well, we're gonna have to throw you in jail for the night." And that's just like where my mouth would lead me. I was like, I don't know. Police officers didn't scare me, and I hated everything. So yeah, that was what happened in by the end of my 12th grade high school. That was it was really bad. I had to calm down after that. I didn't do anything about my drinking, but I eventually just calmed down. I was like, okay, I can't be like mouthing off like this is getting me in trouble. I remember my mom was like in tears after she picked me up. She was like, "What are you doing? I don't know what to do with you right now." It's just, and I really felt that, and I was like, I could see that she was really scared, and I did not like that. So I eventually calmed down. I went to college later on, and during my second year of college, they ended up removing my pacemaker, and just because they thought my heart was fine. And I remember after that, like, something switched during that year where I think I was like really depressed. I was full of anxiety. The only time I felt normal was when I was drinking. And so that increased the amount of alcohol that I drank. And yeah, there were just like times where I was just drinking like overly, way too much. Like, the drinking would go on for, I don't know, I think the first week of college was always the craziest, and it was like an entire week of just binge drinking. And but after that, I could hold it together, just drinking like Thursdays and then the weekend. But the the momentum towards drinking more and more days a week was growing. Eventually, after college, I got my first job. I was a software engineer, and I landed a job, and I started partying with some of my friends just on the weekend. I was doing really well at my job. I got a promotion, and I moved over to the head office from Nova Scotia to New York City, which is like, now looking at it, it's like going from a town of 1,000 to a town of 8 million. It's just, wow, okay, what a promotion. This is going to be insane. It's exactly what I wanted with my life. I was just living the fast life, and I was just identifying with that rock and roll lifestyle that I was always in tune with growing up, like heavy metal. And I was just like rock and roll and partying, and I was like, here I was in the big city of the Big Apple, and here I am. But little to my detriment, that would actually, I would, it would take me down eventually. Yeah, I moved to New York City. I was really lonely. I didn't know how to meet people. The only way how I knew how to meet people was going to the bar. So I frequented a bar, in my neighborhood, and I became friends with the owners. I became friends with all the other regulars. I met some of the most wonderful people. I'm still friends with them today. So I wouldn't change anything in the world, but that was how I knew how to make friends, is just through drinking. Because sober, I was just too anxious and too much. I had too much social anxiety in order to be able to properly make friends and be okay with myself. Um, but that led to New York City increased my drinking from maybe 3 times a week to 7. Here's where, like, every day after work, I was at the bar across the street, hanging out with me, trying to meet new people, and just trying to feel normal. Um, I was just, I started having a lot of blackouts. Like, there's so many nights that I do not remember. There was one night where I remember I was 2 blocks away from home. That is a 30-second car drive. The owner of the bar told the bartender, "You have to drive that guy home. He's too drunk to walk and to get there safe. And if he gets hit by a car, that comes back to us." So they were worried that I was so drunk that I couldn't even walk home 2 blocks away, and they had to drive me. I think that was really, really problematic. But nonetheless, I managed to calm it down later. I ended up getting a girlfriend, and we had a relationship which was based around alcohol. We went out to eat. Before we went out to eat, we would obviously have some drinks, and everything revolved around drinking, and it was a lot of fun. Um, yeah, and I think at that point I had, like, there was a few years there where I felt like, wow, okay, I think I'm good. I feel pretty good. I had saved some money. I wasn't drinking as much, and everything just felt like it was falling into place. And then soon after, I think she had gotten a job where she worked nights, and I can pinpoint now where my drinking started increasing. I started having more time to myself, and I was just replacing it again with drinking. And I started having anxiety at work, and that was really scared me. I was like, I'm drinking too much. How do I handle this? And I would go back and forth between drinking too much and not drinking. And eventually, it caught up with me where I had mono and hepatitis A. It was a really scary experience for me. I yeah, my pee. This might be gross, but these things attack your liver. So my pee was like the color of coffee. I had hair that was falling out. My skin was yellow. I was really scared. I was like, uh, before I got diagnosed, I'm like, this is my drinking. I'm drinking too much, and it's leveling my liver. And now I'm probably going to die. So I was really scared. But thankfully, it was mono and hepatitis. I tested positive for both, but that kept me sober for 3 weeks. And after that, I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be scared like that about drinking anymore. So I'm gonna try to, you know, be good with drinking. So anyway, I wrestled with it for a little while. I was okay, then I wasn't. But I had read one of my idols, Duff McKagan, had come out with a book. He's the bassist for Guns N' Roses. Had wild times growing up, and they all became sober. And during in his book, it became my Bible. Like, everything that he wrote in that book, I remembered, and down the line, it came to help me. Um, and I'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, so my girlfriend at the time started working nights. My drinking was increasing. I was still, after getting over mono, I quickly went back to drinking. Everything was fine. Had some anxiety. I remember one time I decided to drink during the day on a Saturday, and that kind of changed things too, because it began some day drinking. Um, and then so that started the day drinking. Then I went to work with a lot of anxiety, and I was like, well, for lunch, why don't I just go have a drink? And then I realized that, oh wow, that's my anxiety is cured. I can actually work. I did amazing. I got promoted, and that was I did that for quite some time. But yeah, that eventually, you can't do that forever. Um, and eventually, we did get married. It didn't last long. It lasted for, I think we were married for 2 years, but my alcoholism just kind of took the best of me and took everything down. And I think even based on like our relationship was based around alcohol, I think it's best that we probably separated paths because she did not have the problem that I had, and that's all good. Here we are today. We're sober and living an amazing life. But back to New York City. Eventually, I ended up losing my job. I was laid off. I wasn't fired. There were some days where I probably showed up to the office having drank too much, but I didn't. For me, it was just, oh well, I'm only having a couple of drinks to cure some anxiety. I'm not doing anything terrible. But I was laid off. I was part of a huge layoff of the company. After that happened, I realized, um, I have a, they gave me severance first of all, but it really scared me because I'm like, what am I going to do now? I have a drinking problem. I can't stop drinking, um, and yeah, I didn't know what to do with it. So what I did was I started every day at the bar, and I took interviews from there. It was my office, and I stayed there from start to finish, from bar open to bar close. That was my day. I was just there. Um, and eventually I did land a job. I landed one in Austin, Texas, and that's why I'm here right now. I landed a job from a friend that I had worked with. He had an open spot. I got the job easily. I took the interview over Zoom. I had a glass of wine while in a mug while I was taking that interview. Um, and yeah, eventually I did get it though, and I moved to Austin, and some things changed, but I managed to have some sobriety during the day for quite some time when I first got to Austin, for maybe a few months. But then eventually my day drinking came back, and so did my anxiety, and so did my depression. Eventually, I moved here with my ex-wife, and eventually I broke down. And yeah, I was like, I was so full of anxiety and so depressed. I was crying here and there. It was just like start with fits of crying and just out of nowhere. And so yeah, I checked myself into a detox facility, and that was my first like, real experience into getting help. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed help. Um, I wish I would have done it earlier, but I think everybody says that after they get sober and they realize how what they were missing out on. I spent the next year after I got out of detox, kind of battling getting on and off the horse. I would quit drinking, and then I would, you know, I would spend maybe 2, 3 weeks not drinking. Then my head would get into me. Okay, you're good. You're good this time. We can get a drink. We can easily do it this time. And then before you know it, I would fall off the horse, and I would need to go to an urgent care facility in order to get Librium or some sort of benzo in order to deal with the shakes or the withdrawal effects so that I could get sober again. And then at one point, I did that so much during the year that the urgent care, I walked in and they were like, "Oh, I know what you want." And that right there was enough to be like, wow, the receptionists at urgent cares know that I'm here to get benzos because my alcohol withdrawal is too bad. And I think that was just an eye opener. And that year, that's when my wife eventually left me. And after she did that, I went to detox again, and that was almost my last time drinking. I did AA after that. I got a sponsor. I did the 12 steps. It really did work for me. It was what I needed at the time. It was a place for me to go. I felt like I fit in. I didn't know where else to go, how else to get help. Now being online, there's so many places where you can get help and so many places you can turn outside of AA. But it is still a great avenue if people are spiritual and you feel like that's something you can do. It can definitely work for you. For me, it didn't last. I think I went there for 4 months, and eventually I fell off the wagon again for a week. And then I wasn't having it. I was thinking, I was a weekend. I was already having the shakes, waking up. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing this again. And after a week, I was like, that's it. I'm not drinking anymore. I then, after a week of drinking, January 8th was my first day of sobriety of 2018, and it is currently my date of sobriety. And we're going on 3 years. We just passed 1,000 days. I'm feeling great. Um, the the next a year and a half was really hard because what I discovered was that I am really, really empty inside, and I was just purposeless. Um, People have a purposeful life. I did not have that. I didn't know what I was doing, why I was here on this planet. And I really needed to do some soul searching. I needed to shed some baggage off of my shoulders. I did a lot of therapy. I went through the psychedelics. I tried mushrooms. I did an ayahuasca ceremony. Um, and yeah, I think those were also great experiences. I don't think doing psychedelics is something that everybody should do, like just to do them for fun. It was definitely something I was doing medicinal. It was led by a shaman. But yeah, it was actually a really enlightening experience. And now I think at the beginning of this year we started with COVID, and we were getting in lockdown, and I was out on a run, and I just had a sudden thought that, you have a story. Your name is Craig. You are now sober for 3 years. This is something that should be shared. And out of that, I created what's called Mind Uncaged now. It's an Instagram. I have an Instagram feed. I also have a website, and I do recovery coaching now. I coach people on becoming sober, and I inspire people to get sober. I don't care how people get sober. If you're struggling right now, I don't you can go, please do, set up a consultation on minduncaged.com, and I'm happy to help you. But if you have other avenues that you want to try, go do it. Don't don't not do it. You need to get help. You do it now, and that's the message I want to share. And sobriety is amazing gift. I can't say enough about it. I learned so much about myself, and without it, I wouldn't know myself. I wouldn't know who I am. I would just be an empty person with an empty soul with no message. But today, I am thankful that I do have that, and I can share that with you. So, with that, thank you, and good luck to everybody.